Welcome to the Family Milk Cow podcast, where in every episode I cover topics that equip you with the skills and know-how to look after your girls in the barn. Family milk cows are more than just livestock. They are a part of our families. They deserve the best care possible from knowledgeable and responsible owners. So pull up a chair or your milk stool and let's dive into another episode of the Family Milk Cow podcast. Welcome back for another episode of the Family Milk Cow podcast. I'm your host, Kelsey Wolf. You can also find me on the blog and YouTube channel, Rough and Tumble Farmhouse. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about how to train up your replacement heifer, or just kind of talk through what I do with my heifer calves after they're born to sort of get them going right away in training for being a milk cow someday. My methodology when it comes to training animals, it might sound kind of hokey, but it kind of goes back to my love of horses and, of course, horse films growing up. And I have seen The Man from Snowy River about 5,000 times. And in that movie, Jim Craig, the kind of main character in it, he says to another character that you work with a horse, not against him. And that in general is how I look at training any animal I've ever worked with my entire life. Whether it's training cows or goats or dogs or any other sort of animal, it really works best to go with their natural instincts and kind of figure out what makes sense to them and work with that to get what you want out of the situation. And the same thing goes, of course, for milk cows. Now, naturally, we are doing something that is unnatural to them. Being milked by a human is not something that they are typically expecting when they're born, just knowing how to do that sort of a thing. So we do have to teach them in as gentle a way as possible. Let's just start with first milking. When my cows freshen, I always have them bring their calves in with them. And I should say, to kind of back up, that I do milk sharing, and I talked about this in season 1, kind of my whole process for that. But I typically keep the calves with their moms for the first month at least full time, because I still get plenty of milk and I find that it's the best for the calves. So that first milking, mom comes in and baby comes in too. And sometimes it takes a little bit of corralling the first few times to kind of get her used to that process. But I have mom come in, baby comes in, and with my setup, I milk kind of in the aisle in between the stalls in our little barn. And so my cow, she gets tied, and then the calf, I just let wander around, and it doesn't really cause any issues with our setup, but I could understand in some situations. Or I have on occasion, there's kind of a penned off stall area where mama cow can see the baby really well, baby can see mom, and I can put the baby in there if I need to keep her from getting her nose where it shouldn't be. But in general, those first few weeks, just getting the baby to come in with mom and get used to that same repetition to coming in for milking morning and night, getting used to me being around. I always make sure I take some time to pet the heifer. I give her lots of scritches and scratches and let her just be curious about me and just kind of have it be a natural, normal, fun thing that she just grows up from her very first day of life thinking, okay, yep, this is totally normal. I will let that keep up for, again, the first few weeks, and then I will start to introduce a halter. And so with a halter, I basically put it on baby, and then I just kind of drape the rope over her back and let her just kind of wear it around, and the rest of the method stays the same. This is just to get her used to the feeling of the halter and slowly introduce it so it's a thing where, once again, this is completely natural and normal. After usually just a few days, a few times, she just completely starts ignoring it. So again, I get just a nice calf size halter, and it's just kind of one of the, I think, like $10 ones from Fleet Farm or something like that. Put it on her and then drape it around her back. I also usually, at this point, when we start getting accustomed to the halter, is I will hold on to the lead and I will do some brushing with her. At this point, too, just in my general petting her and loving up on her and getting her used to me, I have let her check out the brush when I brush my cows before I milk. And during that time, I always give the calf an opportunity to kind of smell the brush and be brushed if she wants to. But once we have the halter on, I will hold her lead and make her stay in her spot and then just kind of brush her from nose to tail. Nothing super long. It just takes about 30 seconds top to bottom. Now, again, after we have done this for a little bit, usually it's around maybe when they're 2 months old, I will start to have them stand tied, or at least be tied. So for this, you're going to need to have a longer lead if you're going to use this method. And I find a spot where it's a comfy area for them to lay down. So I happen to have a ring that's tied in that kind of pen area I was telling you about. That's just about the right height. And it's also an area that I've used as a stall before and actually a birthing pen. So it's got some nice straw and stuff in there. So I have baby go in there. Once we put the halter on, we lead over there, and that takes some time, kind of teaching her how to give to pressure, and it doesn't go well for most of it. You end up kind of dragging them over there, but they figured out pretty quick. And I get her over to her little ring and I tie her to the wall. And then it's the same process as when she's standing, where I brush her nose to tail. I also start to handle her udder, not a ton. I just brush my hand kind of over it as if I was sort of brushing off some dust or some dirt or something, just to get her used to the idea of being touched there. Now, how I have her tied is pretty loosely because she's still really little, and most of the time when you're bringing calves in with mom, they are going to want to rest and sleep long before you're done with the whole milking process. So I tie her nice and loose so that she has to stay tied and she gets used to that sensation of being tied. But when she gets tired of fighting with it, or she's just kind of tired in general, she can lay down. And I will repeat that process every single day, having her be tied until they're a few months old. I kind of gauge based on how old the animal is and when they are ready to stand tighter and stay standing the whole time during milking. So that's kind of going to be up to you and your calf as to when you want to sort of introduce kind of the next step in terms of their sort of milk training, and that is just tying them so they have to stay standing during the entire milking session. Now, also from the time that I am doing just kind of the halter introduction, I kind of do just a tiny little bit of halter training. If you've done any training with animals, you know that a lot of times doing short sessions that hopefully end on a good note is really the ticket with a young animal. So starting from back when we first started putting the halter on, I will then always lead her out of the barn and take her halter off out in the pasture. And again, those early days, we're not looking for perfection. We're just trying to get her out in a way that isn't too much fight. So sometimes, let's say I have her tied and I have mom tied, I will lead her mom out first, and then I will lead the heifer out after. So she has a lot of reason to want to go outside. She's already doing it. If anything, I'm having to hold her back a little bit to get her used to it. Now, eventually, Juneberry is, she knows what milking is, and she's ready to come in when it's time to be milked. So a lot of times when I put the halter on Juneberry, she just wants to haul ass right into the barn. And she will. She will just head on in there. I usually have her food waiting and I'm catching up to her, which is not great cow training. I should make her walk in with me nice. But what I often do then, or sometimes will do, is I will start haltering the calf out in the pasture with her mom, and Juneberry goes in, and then I will lead the calf in. Again, it's nothing that's crazy. It's nothing that we're spending a ton of time on. It's just a few minutes with all of these steps every day. And the incredible thing is, if you just take 5-10 minutes every day to get them used to you, get them used to the halter, lead them in and out of the barn, have them stand nice and not shake their head when they're taking their halter off. All these sort of things that we kind of slowly build up to and take that little bit of time with every day. By the time your calf is a year old, they are usually pretty well trained, and it really doesn't take any extra effort. Now, that's just how I like to do it, how I like to train in my replacement heifers. When it comes to steers, I really don't do any sort of training with them whatsoever. And this is mostly a self-preservation thing because I know they are going to eventually be for meat. We have raised up a few of our own steers over the years, and I find it very difficult in terms of not getting attached and not feeling guilty. I'm all for, homegrown meats. I love supporting other farms as well. So that's kind of what we do now is we actually use sexed semen. And then if I don't want to keep the heifers, I sell the heifers and then use the money from that to buy beef from another farmer because I really, really have a hard time with that. But you could certainly do the same process with a steer if you wanted to. I joke with my husband, I say, if we ever have another steer out of Juneberry, which hopefully, the sex even works out for us every time. But if we ever have another steer, I said, I'm going to keep him and I'm going to teach him to pull a cart because I just have too hard of a time. They're just so sweet and I just feel so guilty. Even though there's no reason to feel guilty, it's a struggle for me. So I really don't do much. I make sure that my steers are, they're not scared of people. They're used to being around us. I repeat the process with them coming in with mom while they are still pretty young, just because it's less stressful for the cow. But all the other stuff, kind of the haltering and all the extra affection stuff, I don't do just because it's easier for me when it comes time for their respectful dispatching. Now, if you have any great tips for people, I see people asking about this all the time in forums and things about training in your replacement heifers. So if you have some really great tried and true methods, I'd love to hear about them. So make sure you head over and find Family Milk Cow Podcast over on Instagram, and you can hop on the conversation there. Make sure if you aren't subscribed yet to the podcast that you do, because next week we are going to be talking about lice in cows, which is such a hot topic, especially in the spring. So that's an episode you don't want to miss. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Family Milk Cow Podcast. You can become a part of the Family Milk Cow Podcast by joining the Milkmaid Brigade, sponsoring an episode, or following along on social media. You can find links for all these and more, including including show notes, at familymilkcowpodcast.com. If you love what you're hearing, please rate, review, subscribe, and turn on those automatic downloads. One of the best ways to support this show is simply by sharing it. And as always, make sure to give your girl down in the barn a good scratch behind the ears from me.